Hi everyone, nice to see you. Okay, that was quite a good introduction, thank you very much. And I think some of the things you mentioned I'll touch on as well, which was not planned. So this is my first time at the FCA. I feel very welcomed, thank you. It's also my first time at Agile Roundabout, so thank you for the invite. And it's been nice to meet some of you so far. I'm Clare Young. I like helping people and teams thrive and make delivery happen. I'm a director at an employee-owned digital agency that helps government to deliver services that use technology and data to improve outcomes for people. I also chair a charity that uses cooking and eating together, which is something that I feel very passionate about. And I'm a toddler mum, and I'm mentioning that because whilst it's a delight, I am very tired and I'm going to be using my slides a little bit more than I'd like to be. So today I'm going to talk about de-risking delivery, and it's something that I get asked about a lot when pitching for work with our clients and in conversations with clients and teams. People ask me, how do you manage risk? How will you reduce risk on my project? How can you make sure nothing goes wrong? It's quite hard questions. There are lots of established frameworks and standards for risk management. There are lots of experts in that field. I don't claim to be one of them, but I have delivered a lot of digital services and products over the years. I have a fairly good understanding of how you can reduce uncertainty when it comes to that delivery, and I think in turn that can de-risk delivery by a large amount. So I wanted to give a little bit of context before I start talking. So my experience is predominantly in the public sector, and the major projects I've been involved in have all been in central government. Before I was at my company, I was a civil servant, so I've seen it from both sides. Many of you in the audience tonight, I think, are from FCA, and whilst I know you are independent, and that's very important, you may recognise some of the challenges here because you're government adjacent. And similarly, any large, well-established organisation probably has similar things, such as BT. Government is complex. You have legacy software and ways of working that were designed pre-internet. You have so many dependencies on teams, people, software, services, external parties. There's regulation that must be followed, and even when there isn't formal regulation, there's deeply embedded cultural norms that are not compatible with iterative software development. And then there's communication challenges with teams in different locations, different countries, using different tools. You add into that suppliers and partners from large and small companies. It creates a lot of noise and potential for communication to be challenging. And finally, there's politics. It's an ever-changing landscape. I have worked under 6 different prime ministers and 11 different secretaries of state, and I've lost count of the amount of times the Ministry of Housing and Communities has changed their name. It feels important to say these things, and when you look at this list, you kind of be surprised about how things even would ever get delivered, but they do, and I think there are some things that I've learned over the last decade or so that help. So for me, the following is key. Getting the right people talking, getting the right information flowing, and getting people moving in the right direction together. Now, these are not particularly innovative, but dealing with the basics is often overlooked. And without ways of working that encourage partnership, transparency, and clarity, I think you're setting yourself up to fail, and not in the good fail fast, fail gracefully way. So I'll go through a bit of these in a bit more detail now. So how do we get the right people talking? Getting to know the people that you're working with is really important. Ideally, you would see them in person. Not all the time, but just occasionally. It makes it a lot easier to have those hard conversations if you've met somebody once or twice, even for a few minutes. And it's something that I try really hard to do, even though I have a distributed team throughout the UK. This photo here is of the delivery community of practice at DXW, which is a company that I work for. We meet a few times a year. This photo was taken in Leeds last year. Emily Webber, some of you may have heard of her, has written a book about the power of the types of informal communities of practice for providing support, social learning, and sharing of tacit information knowledge. I'd recommend her book if you haven't seen it. As a supplier, joining an organisation, we often actively get involved in those communities of practice where they welcome us, as it's a great way to meet people, find out how things work, and build a network that can help you unblock delivery later down the line. You'd be surprised how much we learn through that we're not told about in any more formal ways. So for example, a recent Department for Education project, we learned about their user research library through a member of the community and not through our main contact because they didn't know about it. What it meant is we could reuse things that had already been done in the department, saving loads of time, reducing waste, and that was purely because of a spontaneous connection that we'd made through a community of practice. Another form of collaboration is through multidisciplinary teams. It was touched on a bit earlier about working in collaboration, and that's a really good way of forming connection across different parties, bringing together lots of different experiences and connecting you into lots of different places. Again, important in a complex organisation which isn't mapped anywhere to be able to see. And then the final thing is around, I've totally forgotten what the final thing is. Oh no, I can't see what the final thing is. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute. So how do you get the right information flowing, which is really difficult in complex organisations? For an organisation, there's huge value in remembering and sharing information, and ensuring you have ways of retaining institutional memory will save you a lot of time and reduce a lot of waste. As a supplier, we have varied experiences of onboarding into new work. Sometimes we're presented with reams of information, have great introductions, a really clear brief, and know exactly where we are. Other times we're isolated without a clear brief, we're starting on a blank page, and it's not in our interest to repeat work that has already been done or to cover ground that is well established. Similarly, it's super demotivating and frustrating for our teams to leave an organisation without being able to clearly hand over effectively. Ideally, there would be stability in teams, but this is really not likely to be the case in central government. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of churn, there's a habit of new projects, there's a habit of starting new things, creating new teams, and particularly as a supplier, it's really important that we're not part of that problem. So some examples of the things that we've done to try and create that institutional memory and share the things we're doing. On the slide, you'll see a design history. Now, this is something that the Department for Education do. It's public, it's available on the internet, and they basically have a live decision log of things they're doing and things that you can reuse, not just if you work in education, but if you work anywhere in the public sector. This is a really nice thing that we've been able to contribute to, but also take things from as well. Sharing week notes or month notes or whatever period of time feels appropriate for your project is a really nice way of showing the continuity of delivery. But again, it's a really useful reference point to be able to look back at. LocalGov Drupal, who are a council-led publishing platform designed by councils for councils, they publish their week notes and their design decisions online, and that means that you can look at them for inspiration, but also when we go and work with the local council, we have a whole set of history already there, so we don't have to revisit that, and we can just start adding more value on top of that, which is super. And finally, something that we've done more recently at DXW is introduce the idea of a project story. So it's a kind of scrapbook of information about that project at a point in time, and we're capturing everything from design decisions through to narrative about why something is the way that it is. It's a really nice way for us to onboard our staff onto the project if we have to switch them out, but allows future teams and future collaborators to have something to work with. And then know the direction and deliver will follow. What I mean by that is building on the project stories. We like to create project videos. This is a screenshot example of one from a video recorded around the user journeys for a project with the Ministry of Justice. Now you can see it looks quite complicated or impressive depending on how you interpret that. is why it's really important. You can convey a lot in a 10-minute video, and it allows us to show how information is flowing, how decisions are being made, and that alongside a roadmap allows us a really nice way of telling the story of the project that we're delivering to a whole range of people. We often find ourselves being asked the same question over and over again, and it's really good to have something that we can refer to and share widely as well. And this is something that gets iterated as the phases continue. The other benefit of this is when you have those trickier conversations, those disagreements, it's a lot less personal. You can point towards artifacts, you can point towards why a decision was made at a point in time, and make it more about the project or service that you're delivering, and less about sort of what people can or cannot remember, which is also a really nice tool of being able to push delivery forward rather than focusing on what you used to do or what has come before. So far I've mostly talked about activities for de-risking delivery within a project team, but to have lasting impact you need to ensure you're getting buy-in and influencing the most senior stakeholders, those who make decisions about direction, budgets, and are ultimately the risk owners. A recent Institute for Government report found that civil servants, senior civil servants, have less experience outside of government, with 30% recruited from outside, compared to 80% of delivery professionals working in government. Now, it's important to acknowledge the depth of experience these people have in the civil service competencies and their policy or operational areas. But remember that they will often be used in a particular way, often be used to a particular way of working and managing risk in that way as well. And this may differ from what a team is happening at team level, and certainly what is expected from a supplier when they come in new. And I see a lot of this with tension between teams and the governance layer applied on top of their work as well. As a senior leader, giving a team autonomy and space is scary because it's also giving up control and in some cases visibility. This is compounded when you're ultimately on the hook for delivery. So if you're a team, make sure you find out what information your senior stakeholders need to reassure them. Find out who they're presenting these to and work with them to translate your team's outputs into the form that works for them. And better still, if you can go to the forum with them and explain together, even share the responsibility if it feels appropriate. Invite them into your team, let them watch how you're working, and explain how you're trying to reduce risk and speed up delivery. Generally, if they can see what's going on and they can see that delivery is happening, it's a good way of getting people to sort of trust in the team. And then this picture here on the slide, it's from a recent blog post by somebody called Libby Kurian. She is a senior civil servant at Parliamentary Judicial Service. I think it's really cool that she is talking openly about mistakes, particularly when she is in an organisation that's several hundred years old. Wouldn't necessarily have the culture you'd expect to do that, so I just wanted to call that out. So I wanted to finish with a quote from someone I work with at DFE, the Department for Education. I'll read it out for you. A lot of teams have tried to attempt switching Kim off in the past and haven't succeeded. I'm very impressed with the drive and professionalism in which the current teams have done this. They're referring to a legacy system which is called Kim, and we've recently switched that off, which saves the department a lot of money. The replacement service improves data quality and reduces processing times. It's a positive quote, which is really, really nice, but it's a result of a lot of hard work, and at times it was pretty challenging. The technology part of it was fairly easy, and in theory, the delivery team had a lot of autonomy. The reason why I wanted to bring it up is because when we initially started on the project, there was very little way for team members to communicate and collaborate. It took a long time to understand what was going on, what people actually wanted us to do, and who sat where and was responsible for what. And I think that's probably why previous teams have struggled to actually do the thing that was wanted, which was to turn off the service. I also think that in retrospect, we should have spent more time with the stakeholder properly understanding what they wanted, because on paper what they wanted was a brand new service, and they spent a long time telling us about that service, and all of the kind of interest was on this brand new thing. What they actually wanted and what they actually have praised us for and been impressed about was turning off that legacy system. So I think making sure that we're really clear about what the goal is, but also connecting the department, learning from past mistakes, allows us to get an outcome which is ultimately really positive. And that's me. Thank you. I look forward to some questions later.